Good evening. My name is Roy Sorales. I'm chairman of the Planning Committee. On behalf of myself and my vice chair, Councillor Aldworth, I would like to welcome you to the Planning Committee. This Planning Committee has been held on Wednesday, the 13th of April 2022. The meeting has been held remotely via Microsoft Teams due to restrictions in relation to COVID-19. This meeting will be recorded and made available to view by the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images and audio of those individuals present and or speaking at Planning Committee will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council's website at www.caerphilly.gov.uk. Due to restrictions in relation to COVID-19, Planning Committee site visits have been suspended and this meeting will not be open to the press and general public. However, interested parties may make a request to attend remotely and speak in regard to any item on this agenda. Votes for this meeting will be taken by Microsoft Forms. When a vote is required, the form will appear and then members will be asked to click on the yes, no or abstain and then click on the Submit Vote button. I will now carry out a roll call for attendance. Please can you announce yourself as present when I call out your name? Starting with Councillor Adams.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Aldworth.
Present, Chair.
I believe we have an apology from Councillor Andrews and Councillor Bevan. Councillor Mike Davis.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Dix.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Fussell.
Hello.
Councillor Rob Goff.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Harding.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Higgs has sent an apology. Councillor Hussey.
Present.
An apology from Councillor Miles. Councillor Ridgewell. Saw you earlier. Councillor Ridgewell, probably having trouble with his speaker. We'll go to Councillor Simmons, who's sent in an apology. Councillor John Taylor.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. I'm present as well, obviously. I'm still waiting to hear from Councillor Ridgewell, just to be sure that he is in the meeting still.
He's in attendance, Chair. I can see him on
He
the
is in
participants
attendance.
list.
Okay. Well, thank you for confirming your attendance. Please can I remind attendees that if they lose connection during the meeting, please make every effort to reconnect. However, the meeting will continue as long as the meeting is quorate. Committee services are on hand and we'll be able to assist you to reconnect if necessary. We've got the apologies for absence, which is agenda item 1. We have 5 apologies. The declaration of interest, which is agenda item 2. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and or prejudicial interest in respect of any item of business on this agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Please could you indicate by putting your hand up if you have a declaration to make. Councillor Mike Adams.
Thank you, Chair. I need to confirm that my long involvement, having contact between myself as a local member and the opponents of the Chamber's House application, whether that can be deemed to be a declaration of interest or not. This is a result of agreeing to attend a meeting with the residents of Blackwood Road to listen to individual views and responses, as well as the well-documented emails that we've had to members and officers, some of which I accept an appropriate response was necessary. And I can confirm that those did I indicate my position to support their opposition or speak in favour of the application before the committee meeting tonight. I therefore feel that I am able to attend with an open mind and will await the officer presentation and those of the opponents and the applicant tonight before making any decision, as I think is the way it should be. I wonder whether Mr. Tranter, if he's available
Mr. Tranter is there. Could you give us a few words?
Yes, certainly, Chair. If I may, Councillor Adams, I think you've answered this yourself, but it's not so much an interest that you have and you need to consider. It is more whether or not you have an open mind to consider the Chambers House application. You say that you have been in correspondence with some of the objectors to the site, and indeed I think you attended a meeting. The important thing is you shouldn't have, and you say you didn't, give any indication about what you thought about the application. What we say, you didn't predetermine it in any way. So as long as you've got an open mind, and as long as you come to this meeting this evening with that open mind, you will listen to the officers' representations, the thoughts and comments of your fellow planning committee members before reaching your decision, then in my view, you are fine, and you are able to continue to sit in the meeting when the Chambers House application is considered. Quite happy to take any further questions you have, Mike. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for
Thanks,
that.
Mr. Tranter.
That's also, okay, thank you, Councillor Adams. I've got 3 other people indicating. Councillor Goff is next.
Chair, if I can, I do. If the other 2 people refer to the same application, my question is related to item 5 on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to take the others first and then come in to me after.
Well, if they're all referring
to agenda item
matters,
7.
Yeah, I mean, if we're all referring to matters on this agenda, I mean, it can be clarified now, can't it? So I'm quite happy for you to come in first, Councillor Goff, as being as we've got an order
Okay,
here.
thank you, Chair. Yeah, I am a member of the Regeneration Project Board, and we've had a lot of detailed discussion regarding this particular project and the funding of it. So I don't know whether it's appropriate that I take part in that debate.
Mr. Tranter?
Yeah, okay, Councillor Goff. Again, it's the same type of issue, really, in that during your discussions on the board, that should not in any way influence how you're going to vote this evening when this application is considered. And as long as you are in that position, I think you can remain in the meeting, take a full part in the meeting and vote when that application is considered. So it's back to having an open mind on the issue.
Okay, Councillor Goff, you happy with that response?
Well, sorry, Chair, no, can I just come back? Sorry to be a pain.
Yes,
the trouble is, with the Regeneration Project Board, I've actually shown support for the project by agreeing and supporting funding the project. It'd be a bit critical now for me to go into the thing and then perhaps vote against it in the planning committee. That's the position I'm in. I just...
Yeah. Well, if you feel that you have or you are going to predetermine the application, Councillor Goff, due to your former actions being on the board, then you should not remain in the meeting when that application is considered.
Thank you, Mr. John. Chair, I feel comfortable if I remove myself from the meeting for that agenda item.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Councillor.
That's fine, Councillor Goff. Thank you.
Okay, then we got Councillor John Taylor, then Councillor Dix. Councillor John Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mr. Tranter, in relation to the application for Austin Grange in Caerphilly, Mr. and Mrs. Griffiths, who lived at Austin Grange, I would consider to be friends of mine, but I don't know whether they still own the property. So I'm not sure whether I should declare an interest and not take any part.
Mr. Tranter.
Yep. So, Councillor Taylor, we're in a bit of the unknown here, aren't we? I don't know whether the planning officer will help us when the Austin Grange application is considered. But bearing in mind that, that's my phone, I'll just ignore that for a moment. bearing in mind that you know the owners or possibly the former owners of the site, I think the thought process you need to go through is, would that in any way affect your consideration when looking at this application and making a decision in the public interest, i.e. would the fact that you knew the owners or the former owners of the site in any way affect your ability to act in the public interest? If it does, then you may want to consider stepping down when that application is considered, when we consider that application later. But if it doesn't, remain in the meeting, Councillor Taylor. Another factor is how close these people are to you. Are they what the Code of Conduct talks about as close personal associates, or are they more acquaintances of yours? Again, if they're in that former category, you may wish to consider stepping away whilst the application is considered.
I would consider them more friends than acquaintances, and therefore, if the planning officer is able to know that they have no connection at all now with the property, then I'd be happy to stay in the meeting. But if we're not certain, then I think I would leave the meeting for that application, just to be on the safe side.
That's
okay.
absolutely
So when
fine,
we get to that
Councillor
item, when we get to that item, then Councillor Taylor, we'll clarify that information if we can right at the beginning. Okay.
I know I should have contacted the officers earlier. I know.
Okay, right. Okay. Otherwise, we'll do it at the start of the item before, so
Thank
that
you,
you can
Chair.
get clarification. Okay. I've got Councillor Dix, but Colin Powell, you wanted to come in first, I think. You may have some information.
On that matter, in relation to Councillor Taylor, I just checked the application form, and because it's a reserve matters application, they don't have to confirm land ownership details. So at this moment in time, we don't know who the applicant or the owners of the site are, effectively.
In that case, Chair, I'll declare an interest and leave the meeting when it comes to that item.
Although Justin's got his hand up as well, he might have.
Yeah, Justin might have some helpful information. Justin?
Yeah, just in terms of the applicant, it is not Mr. Griffiths or Mrs. Griffiths, but I am aware that they have made inquiries into the application and would like to be informed of the decision. So whilst there's nothing on the application to indicate that they're still in ownership of it, there's obviously been some correspondence which indicates that they may still have an interest.
Right. Thank you, Justin. So, Chair, I will declare an interest just to be on the safe
justifies side. Your decision, Councillor Taylor, I think, doesn't it?
Out of interest, again through the chair, out of interest, Councillor Taylor, on the outline application, did you declare an interest out of interest? Too many interests there.
I've got to be honest, I don't recall, and I'm not sure I was actually in the meeting when the outline was granted, because I think the outline was granted quite some time ago.
Yeah. Again, that may be helpful in your consideration of the matter. That's why I was bringing that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tranter.
Okay, shall we move on now to Councillor Dix, please? Councillor Dix.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I just looked at the one for the HMO on Blackwood Road, Robert, and I'm just reading through the application now, and it says a Pobble working in the daytime, some support staff there. As you know, I work for Pobble as a floating support work in the community. I don't believe it will predetermine my decision tonight or preclude me from taking part in the meeting, because I've got an open mind on it. I'm just looking at the planning issue. I'm not going to make any gain from Pobble getting it or not getting it, the application. Yeah.
Okay. Again, if I may, Chair. So, Councillor Dix, this is more of an interest matter in that it potentially affects your employer. So that's one of the interests that you need to consider in the Code of Conduct. I suppose the question I would ask if I was in your shoes, Pobble's a big organisation, you're a support worker. Are you likely at some point in the future to be going up to these premises or not? If the answer is yes, I think I would, if I were you, declare an interest. and conclude that's a prejudicial interest. If not, I don't think it would be a prejudicial interest, and just declare the interest as personal only. You are an employer of Pobble, but very, very unlikely to be affected by this development.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
that's the case. That is the case, Robert. Yeah, so like I said, I'm an employee of Pobble.
Yeah.
I'm not as far as I'm aware. I'm not going to be moved up to Blackwood to work. I work in Newport. I've been working there for 10 years. I got my client base down there. I have nothing to do with anything in Blackwood at all. I can't see that happening in the future.
Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
Right.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Dix.
Thank
I
you.
think we've clarified all the declarations of interest now, so we can move on to agenda item 3, which is the Planning Committee minutes of the meeting on the 9th of March 2022. They are pages 1 to 6 of your agenda pack. I'll go through them one page at a time first. For comment, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, and finally page 6. Will somebody move?
Move, Councillor Goff.
Thank you. It was seconded. I can't hear a seconder.
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Adams. So members, you'll now see a pop-up box appear on your screen. Please be aware that the vote is for councillors only and should appear on the screen. If it appears for anyone else, there it is on the screen. So please say yes to approve, no to reject, and press the abstain button if you weren't present. Rebecca, will you give the outcome of the vote, please, when you're ready?
Yes, Chair, that's carried by majority. So you got 10 yes, 0 no, and 1 abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Right, now we'll move on to agenda item 4, which is the Planning Committee meetings of the 23rd of March 2022, which is page 7 to 12 of the pack. I shall again go through them one page at a time for accuracy. That's page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, and page 12. Will somebody move those minutes, please?
I'll move, Chair.
They moved and seconded. I hear 2 voices. I'm not sure who they were, but I heard at least two comments. So it's been moved and seconded. Can we have the vote on the screen again, please? This is for members only. And vote yes to approve, no to reject, and abstain if you weren't present. That vote being completed, Rebecca?
Yes, Chair, you got 10 yes, 0 no, and 0 abstain. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we now can move on to agenda item 7. We are moving the agenda around slightly to accommodate this agenda item number 7 first, because we have 2 speakers. This item is application number 22/0018/RET, which is Chambers House, number 49 Blackwood Road, Pontland Fryth, Blackwood, and it's pages 51 to 64 on your pack, and the case officer is Mike Jones. Mike, would you like to present this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and share the presentation now. Bear with me. Can you see the presentation, Chair?
Yes, it's on the screen.
Thank you. I'm Mike Jones, case officer of the application reference number 22/0018/RET. Full planning permission is being sought to retain and complete the change of use of the building from office accommodation to a house in multiple occupation to be used for emergency housing, move-on accommodation for the homeless and associated works. Chambers House Sorry, Chair, just a second. Thank you. Chambers House is a large detached part 2-storey, part 3-storey building with a single-storey annex in an elevated position on rising ground to the western side of Blackwood Road in Pont-y-Ffraeth. The highway frontage comprises a high stone-faced retaining wall. The building is accessed from street level by means of steps. There is no vehicular access to the building from the front or the rear. To either side of the premises are substantial dwellings. To the rear are school playing fields, and on the opposite side of Blackwood Road is open space. The application site is within defined settlement boundaries and is therefore acceptable in principle, subject to all other material planning consideration. 2 immediately adjoining properties were notified of the application by letter and a site notice was displayed. 5 responses have been received. The issues raised and the considered responses to those concerns are set out in the report at pages 58 to 60 of the agenda. The existing plans show the main building to the front of the site extending over 3 floors, and internally the ground floor is divided up into rooms and WCs which would have served the previous use. The flat roofed building to the rear, which is on a higher level, is currently shown internally as having 1 floor level. The 2 buildings are linked by a walkway from the rear of the main building at 1st floor level, connecting to the annex at floor level. The proposed plans show that there will be no external extensions to the property. The 1st floor of the main building is to be reconfigured to provide 4 one-person rooms, these here, a kitchen in this area, and 3 one-person rooms with kitchenettes. Also shown is a bathroom, 2 showers, and a WC. The ground floor of the annex is divided into 6 studio units, 3 one-person units, these 3 here, 2 two-person units, and 1 unit which is a 1 to 2 person. It's proposed to install a 1st floor to the annex, and this will create an additional 3 one-person units with a stairways leading down to the ground floor. 3 one-person units will be created at 2nd floor in the main building. In total, this is enough to accommodate a maximum of 22 persons. The units in the 2nd floor of the annex will be served by existing window openings which face towards the rear of the site. They are here and towards the main building looking forward, and those are they. In addition, there are 4 on the ground floor to the rear elevation. That shows that there are 3 new door openings with windows to the ground floor, and these are to serve each of the individual studio units. The existing windows in the annex in the southern elevation, which are these, are shown as being obscurely glazed. If permission were granted, a condition requiring that they should be non-opening as well and maintained as such would be imposed. A similar condition would be proposed for the existing windows to the side elevation of the annex facing 50 Blackwood Road. Overall, it's considered that the minimal changes to the exterior of the building would not give rise to any adverse impact on the character or appearance of the surrounding area, nor would they give rise to any loss of privacy or create an overbearing impact on the occupiers of the nearest residential properties. The Head of Public Protection does not object to the proposal. In respect of housing delivery, Planning Policy Wales acknowledges that there must be sufficient sites suitable for the full range of housing types to address the needs of the community. Caerphilly County Borough has a shortfall of this type of accommodation. It is therefore considered that the proposal will assist the provision of emergency accommodation and contribute to meeting the needs of the community in line with Planning Policy Wales. That document also advocates the use of previously developed or underutilised land. this site conforms to the definition of previously developed land, and in that it has been vacant for a number of years, it is underutilised. The proposal therefore accords with the aims to better utilise such land within defined settlement boundaries. Having regard to its close proximity to local bus routes and accessibility to rail links to the wider area, together with its location within walking distance of Blackwood, it would make this a sustainable location in regard to the accessibility to shops and services. Welsh Government advice on HMOs is contained in practice notes on houses in multiple occupation published in March 2017, where it is recognised that beyond a given level, the proliferation of HMOs in a specific area may have an adverse effect on the character of the immediate area. There is not a high concentration of HMOs in the immediate vicinity of the application, and in that context, the local planning authority is not in a position to argue that the cumulative impacts of such HMOs, together with this application, would in itself significantly change the immediate character of this part of Pont-le-Ffraith, or detrimentally impact the current levels of amenity received by the neighbouring occupiers. The transportation and engineering manager has raised no objections to the proposal. Now, if I may show you some photographs of this is the side elevation of the main building from the rear garden in number 48 Blackwood Road. This window serves a stairwell. These two windows would serve rooms. I referred earlier to the 4 windows on the side elevation of the annex being obscurely glazed. These are they, looking into 48. These photographs look from the rear garden of number 50 Blackwood Road, which is to the north. This is the other side of the annex, and these windows would also be obscurely glazed. And this is looking down the side boundary of number 50 towards the front of the building. In conclusion, it's considered the proposal complies with policy CW2 and CW3 of Caerphilly County Borough Local Development Plan up to 2021, and as such it is acceptable in planning terms. It is therefore recommended that planning permission is granted, subject to the conditions set out in the report in respect of application 22/0018/RET in respect of Chambers House, 49 Blackwood Road, Pont-le-Ffraith. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We now move on to the presentations from the objector and the agent, starting with the objector first. I believe that's Mrs. Llewellyn. Are you there, Mrs. Llewellyn?
Hi there, yes I am.
Yeah, okay. Mrs. Llewellyn, the meeting runs in such a way that you're allowed 5 minutes to make your presentation. You start whenever you wish, and I'll time you. If you get in close to the 5 minutes, you'll hear a ping on my phone that's alongside me. I'll give you a chance to wind up, okay? You start whenever you wish.
Thank you very much. I have already supplied a lot of information. I've been told that has been supplied to everybody in the meeting. I did look at each point that was raised and I gave an answer to those. Can I just point out as well, the Welsh Government, with HMO's transient nature of tenancies, shared facilities and lack of interaction, are more intensive than single households. This will have an impact not just on residents, especially with large numbers. 10 to 22 is classed as a large HMO, which is classed from a parliamentary document as high risk. This will also impact on the wider neighbourhood. That is the equivalent of 6 house properties which have been changed into a HMO. It has only been vacant for a couple of months while it's been sold, so it hasn't been vacant for a very long time. It was for a couple of months whilst it was being sold. Sorry. Sustainability, amount of refuse and stairs leading to pavements. I've only seen 2 bins on the street, whereas there are 10 occupants. On Sunday, I saw overflowing bins next to the main building. They will not put out, and as planning has not been given yet, then this rubbish must have been disposed of in another way for now. This will not be kept up, especially if numbers are 22 occupants. Previous planning concerns, old court offices were closed due to subsidence and new ones built, subsidence in back courtrooms. Noise, disturbance and smells, antisocial behaviour. Noise will obviously be an issue alongside privacy. Not only with the park on the main road, but 10 to 22 occupants that usually have problems such as alcohol, drugs, mental issues, but all are confidential. This will result in an antisocial hub of behaviour. Traffic, there's no parking at the rear, which has already been mentioned. We've already had people trying to park up our private lane, causing animosity and frustration with residents. Car park at the front will start charging soon, resulting in more people trying to park elsewhere. Double yellows at the front of the building, though I am well aware that there are people that use the car park now, but as I said, they will be starting to charge soon. There's quite a few cars that have been there overnight, up to 5 to 6, I think, vans and cars that have been parked there overnight. Design, the building's design is that of an office and courtroom used in office hours, so it does not lend itself to residential use. I know that you've mentioned the windows already. If its original use was residential, the windows would not have been allowed to overlook properties, and there must be more than 20, well, it is actually, I counted them on your little slide, but then it was about 28 with openers affecting privacy. Being used in office hours was manageable. 24/7 will take away all our privacy and is not what the building's original use was for. It will make a massive difference to us. The original use, as I said, in office hours, we had our own weekends where we could do as we wished. We've got children playing in the garden. We'd overlooked. I stood in the building myself, opened the window, only went like that on my toes, and I could see right into my garden and right into Mr. and Mrs. Postian's. Facilities like these with large numbers of occupants have failed and damaged people irreparably. The Sir Howry Arms, 5 minutes away, the Highbury House, 2 minutes away. I included those in the information I sent originally as well. Numbers proposed for Chambers House are higher. They originally 10, obviously, as you know, to 22. The building is higher, it's elevated, and it's on top of us, basically. And I'm sure that anybody that has been to see it would agree. There is nowhere for them to congregate, recreational space, no garden, so we'll congregate on the side, gully steps and front forecourt. Summer's approaching, people gathering to drink, etc., and the noise and disturbance is going to be affecting all the residents. The size of the communal area depends on the number of occupants, and I think money should be put into purpose-built HMOs rather than trying to adapt buildings that were not fit for purpose and weren't meant for that type of facility in the first place. I'm aware that Mr. Dix is the only person who has any experience of HMOs and hostels, and it would be interesting to listen to the types of things he's encountered in these places. And I think, unless there's anything else, I think that's...
Yeah. 3 sides now, you've got no relaxation.
3 sides, no relaxation. We've got the park in the front. We've got all the windows now on the sides, and we've got no front garden and we've got no back garden if this goes ahead. We've got no privacy at all. The control of 10 to 22 people, and then you can't control them. It would be very difficult to sort of label where everybody is at a set time, and a lot of them do have problems, and this is the issue, and it is confidential, so nobody knows what problems they've had then. You know, so that we have got massive issues, and we are massively concerned about our future living here. We don't want to move. This is where we like living, and we're really concerned at what's going to happen, basically, and the effect it's going to have on our lives.
Have they got grandchildren that they go in the garden and have people with, they don't know, looking down at them?
Well, this is it. Like I said, we've all got children, grandchildren as well. They use the garden and paddling pools, sunbathing in your garden. You know, you're going to have to think twice about doing anything like that.
The thing is, having obscure windows is fine, but it doesn't stop people in the summer from, you know, congregating. It's human nature. They're going to want to be outside.
There's only like 3 feet, 3.5 feet between the fence, and no matter what fence, if you put too much fence in, it's just going to be like a prison. And any other type of fence, and you can see through, and we won't know who's there, we won't know why they're there, and they'll be able to look at us. And the thing is as well, it's like originally they were able to watch when we're leaving, when we're coming. I know it's a separate issue, but it's a similar sort of theme. The builder, he made...
Please, Mrs. Llewellyn, you've extended beyond your 5 minutes.
Sorry, thank you very much. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, I should have spoken to you earlier, and I was speaking to you, but my mic was actually switched off, so I'm sorry about that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We now move on to the agent, Mr. Oliver or Mrs. Oliver Thomas, I'm sorry. Mrs. Thomas, are you there?
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Hello. Okay, yes, again, you've got the 5 minutes. I assume you've already heard the explanation that I gave to the previous speaker. So whenever you're ready to start, Mrs. Thomas.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. As I said, my name's Catherine Oliver Thomas and I'm the agent and the architect for the applicant, Lily Alex Properties Limited. And I'm speaking in support of the application for this change of use of Chambers House. Full planning permission is being sought for a change of use from office accommodation to a house of multiple occupation to be used for emergency housing, move-on accommodation for the homeless and associated works. In terms of the reason for this change of use application, the COVID-19 emergency has resulted in major demands on the services of emergency housing Caerphilly Quays, with the pandemic having significantly increased the urgency for the provision of suitable residential accommodation for the homeless. Lily Alex Properties Limited purchased Chambers House in 2020 and has been working with emergency housing Caerphilly Quays to find ways of increasing their provision of suitable emergency residential accommodation for the homeless. Chambers House has been used as office accommodation for several decades, and the proposals for its change of use would involve internal rearrangements with only minimal external alteration and no extension. The planning officer's report explains the proposed alterations in detail, with the main external alterations being the insertion of a window to the side south elevation of the main block at ground floor level, the insertion of 4 windows doors to the rear block, and the alteration of opening lights to the upper windows to the rear block. Chambers House would be occupied, operated and managed by Emergency Housing Caerphilly Quays, Pobble, for the provision of emergency residential accommodation for the homeless. Lily Alex Properties would remain the owner of the building and would initially develop the building so that it is suitable for residential accommodation for the homeless. The building would then be occupied as emergency accommodation, with the building being managed by Emergency Housing Caerphilly Quays, Pobble, who would also provide appropriate support services for the residents. The layout of the lower ground floor of the main building is being retained as office space to provide this important support accommodation services. In terms of staffing and supervision of the building, Pobble Group, which provides housing, care and support services, has support staff on site from 9 AM until 5 PM. There are licensed and registered security guards on site from 9 o'clock at night until 6 o'clock in the morning, Monday to Thursday, then 24 hours a day on Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Caerphilly Quays staff use the office space on a hot desk basis during the week also, providing support to the residents. In addition, part of the office space has been pre-allocated to the Department for Works and Pensions. DWP will be basing 2 advisors within the project, Monday to Friday between 9 and 5. This arrangement will cover all residents within the project, with all appointments pre-arranged. However, staff will be on site to allow drop-in appointments for residents. DWP will be utilising the designated office space, including 2 private interview rooms, and as well as arranging interviews for new universal credit claims, mentoring and employability support sessions will be on offer. It is hoped that in the future, as the premises becomes more established, the office space could be used for other local support partners, utilising a hot desk setup, allowing networking with various teams, encouraging partnership working and information sharing and co-delivery of services. Geographically, Mid-Valley East is one of the largest Caerphilly clusters within the dispersed communities, and Chambers House is in a relatively central location within the cluster, with the building being on a main road and in walking distance to the main bus station in Blackwood, providing an ideal location for residents and their support. To conclude, the proposal for the change of use is to provide much needed residential accommodation for the homeless, fully supported with appropriate management and support services. We respectfully request that the application be approved in line with the officer's recommendations. Thank you very much for your time. Sorry, I can't, Councillor, I can't hear you.
Yeah, you're on mute, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. We're now moving on to the debate, and I see Councillor Dix's hand up, and then Councillor Adams. So, Councillor Dix, would you like to come in first?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just go, like I said, as one of the speakers earlier alluded to, and I've said it myself, I work for Pobble, but that's not going to influence me in any decision I make tonight. This is just based on me as a county councillor looking at an application with the knowledge that I have from my own life experiences and in my employment knowledge as well. A HMO, I've never seen a HMO of 22 people. I work in hostels where they've had 22 people, 27 people, and where each individual client has their own support worker to support them through the daytime, and in the evening, when the support workers leave the premises, another support worker takes over with a security guard to ensure that there's a support worker on site 24/7. We used to do sleepovers. There's no such facility for this year, so you're leaving security guards on their own, which I think is really risky. Really risky. Security guards from companies come and go. They're never consistently the same people, and depends what the company has got options and like to come in. So that can be a huge problem in the real world. Also, no outside facilities. Many clients will have drug and alcohol issues, as alluded to. They cannot be refused because they're drug and alcohol issues, placed in the hostel in the HMO, but they will need that support. Now they've got no outside place to go, so they will gather outside in the fields across the way where it's quiet and easy to meet up with friends, etc. There's no parking for staff. Where will staff come to and park through the day? They're going to know where to park to. At the moment it's free, but that's a car park for the whole community. So there's no staff parking on the premises at all to accommodate staff. And believe it or not, some people who are homeless do have cars as well. I didn't think they do, but they do. Okay, I'm not going to say they don't, and they do. Okay, so there's issues with that. Cars being left around without any MOT, tax, insurance, etc. Or left in parked, causing problems for other residents. Also, converting old buildings. I've worked in many old buildings which have been converted into hostels, and they are a nightmare because you've got blind spots. They're not purpose built. They're very, very difficult to police and keep an eye on what's going on. The hostel I worked in was a new hostel. It was, I say new, it was 20 odd years old. And even that was difficult to police because of design problems. It really is difficult. Any little corners people hide behind, hide substances behind, hide weapons, hide money, hide all kinds of things behind different places. Now, that building is an old building. It'll be a gift, like a rabbit warren in reality. I haven't heard any mention of CCTV cameras on the stairwells to protect the staff or to protect clients. I've been in hostels, I can say hostels and HMOs where clients attack each other and we have to call the police, where knives are used, where needles are used against each other. Okay, that's the reality of it. I'm all for hostels and I'm all for HMOs, but they have to be safe for the community inhabits that hostel or HMO, and they have to deliver for the people that we're investing in. And what I've seen tonight, I can't say that. And I cannot support this application in its current form. And I've got real concerns about the clients, the staff, and the community based on my own experiences of 11 years working in supporting people of all different kinds of people, from drug addicts to people who've been in prison for paedophilia, you name it. I've supported lots of clients and I enjoy my job, and everybody needs a chance. But at the end of the day, I've got to say, we've got to base our decisions as councillors in reality. Is it going to be good for the people in there? I don't believe it'll be a success the way it's designed, the building or the support staff in there. If it was a hostel and it was purpose built and it had all those things I said, easy access, CCTV cameras, no blind spots, gardens, parking spaces, all that it needs, I would be confident. But I couldn't. I only live up the road from it. I'm not going to be affected by it because it's half a mile down the road. But I could not, without my hand on my heart, support this application today because of those real, genuine fears. And I would ask the members of the committee to think about what I've said. You've got to have your own opinions. You've got to make your own mind up, like I have as well. And it's not an easy decision for me to come to. I can assure you of that. because I want to see homeless people off the street and I want to see them looked after. I don't want to see them just something ad hoc put together that's come from the COVID and then it's being built up into something that it's not. That's not the way we should be doing it. We should be making sure we provide the right services that fit the bill so we get the right results. If we don't, it's going to be an expensive failure and it's going to fail for the clients and for the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dix. I've got two officers who've got their hands up at the moment. I think before we call you in, I go to Councillor Adams first, who's another local member, and then I'll fetch the officers in, and perhaps if it's necessary, then you can comment on both the members' views and opinions on it. So, Councillor Adams, come in first.
I've got some slightly different questions to be asking and to pose. Regarding this, I'm sure it will be fresh in both Kerry's and Carwyn's mind if they could immediately
if you're on a completely different, if you're coming from a different angle entirely, then that's fine. Okay, I'll call in first of all Kerry Denman and then Carwyn Power.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to respond to Councillor Dix in terms of some of his concerns raised in that conversation, and firstly to confirm that there is full CCTV footage within the premises of that building. So all communal areas are covered by 24/7 CCTV. We do appreciate that this does increase the capacity at the facility, but what we have done since we occupied the premises in July of 2021 is ensure that we have put robust risk assessments in place when looking at who we move into that premises, and I think that's testament to the fact that, and I do appreciate that hostel style accommodation does bring its challenges, but that from our perspective we've had no police call outs or concerns in respect to the occupation of that premises since we brought it into use on the 5th of July. We will continue to ensure that when we're looking at matching tenants to those properties, that we ensure that we put that robust risk management plan in place, and a large proportion of individuals who were accommodated at Chambers House are actually in employment, and therefore these are individuals who are experiencing homelessness first time, of where they are in need of affordable accommodation, and this kind of nature and style of accommodation is suitable for them because geographically it allows them to continue to access work, etc. And from that perspective, if tonight's planning application was approved, we would look to continue working with our Caerphilly Quays staff, with our emergency accommodation staff, to ensure that we were taking into account the needs of the community, but also the needs of the homeless persons coming through the centre at this point in time. And in addition to that, we have considered the impact around the parking, and that is something that both for staff and residents, if the application is granted tonight and when the additional charges are brought in, we will be having further discussions on about how we support them with that. However, we recognise that there are a large number of temporary accommodation units that may not allow them to have access to parking, and that can often be challenges faced within other residential areas as well. So from our perspective, we have a number of individuals who do have access to vehicles, but we also have a lot of people who are heavily reliant on public transport. And I think that, as highlighted in part of the planning application presentation earlier, this particular unit has exceptional transportation links throughout the borough and also from externally outside of Caerphilly, which helps us promote that employment and employment sustainability, which is quite key for us as a homelessness service in tackling the larger issue around homelessness and getting people back into education, training and employment. As we have said, we do have staff on site, and that staff provision will continue. That staff provision, as it is at the moment, is we have 2 POBL workers, and it's actually between 9 AM and 6 PM daily. And if the staff levels need to increase, then part of our supporting people commissioning considerations throughout this year or into next year, subject to any kind of further development of that unit, that can be reconsidered. In addition to that, our own Caerphilly Quays staff have 2 support workers attached to themselves, so they automatically will be providing additional support to any residents in occupation on that particular site.
Okay, thank you, Kerry. Thank you very much. We now move on to Carwyn Powell. You still want to come in on this particular issue, Carwyn?
I think it's probably best if I come in after councillors Adams
okay.
and Fussell have spoken, Councillor Chair.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, then Councillor Adams first.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of different kind of questions, I suppose. First one actually is for Mike Jones on this application tonight. It's described as a retention now, but it's retention plus the added development for the accommodation at the back. I don't remember this original temporary application that didn't come before officers or I say officers, certainly councillors, including the extension at the back for the moving on. And I'll be asking about what does moving on actually mean, probably of Kerry later. So is this an accurate description of tonight's application, that is retaining both aspects, the HMO as we originally knew, and the extension to build larger units for perhaps 2 people, and the issues that might cause on the parking, which we've already talked about? So is this a proper description as retention of what's already existing?
Insofar as it's retaining part of the works to the front of the site, then yes, and they complete to, I think the phrase is to retain and complete the change of use of the building. So in that respect, the additional works to the rear would be the completion. So I think perhaps it does cover the application.
But was the added bit actually included in the original temporary permission?
No, councillor. No, councillor.
So should we be calling it something different?
No, because I think, if I can explain, I think what you're referring to is a certificate of lawful development, which was granted. Now that is not a planning application.
No, that's
it is
right, exactly.
A legal interpretation of the whether the development in planning terms was lawful. Now, what they applied for was to use the building for homeless accommodation for a period of 12 months, and it was being operated by the council. In that respect, it complied with the permitted development order that was in force at the time and still is, and therefore we were obliged to grant that certificate.
Yes.
That is a separate issue from what we're dealing with now. It was for 12 months. That permitted development right will expire, I think, in July, as they commenced development commenced the use on the 5th of July last year. So that period will expire. So what is the application is looking to do is to retain that development and also to add these additional units to the rear. So it is a retention and completion of the development.
Did you want to come back in now?
The question was the completion of the development part of the original temporary application that we had to go through?
No,
because I don't think it was mentioned in any of the meetings that we had with residents back last year.
No, it wasn't part of the certificate of lawful development, which is not a planning application.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I can see why they want to do this, because to use up all of the building that they had available to them. Yeah, but I'm still arguing in my own mind that it's not retaining what they want to do now, because they didn't have half of what they want to do now. But there we go. You've given your answer, and that's for us to decide. Secondly,
sorry, Councillor. Councillor.
Yeah.
For a second. I suppose what they're really applying for is the retention of the use of the building for what was a lawful use for 12 months, plus the additional works that are proposed now as well. So it's in 2 parts. This kind of application now.
That's right. It's in 2 parts.
Plus the extensions as well. So yeah, I mean the certificate of lawfulness is separate from this application, and there's no intention to sort of hide anything here. It's just purely that we are retaining an existing use of this building. Plus we are looking at now proposals to use extra bits of the building and to carry out alterations. which are intended in part to make it acceptable in planning terms, such as obscure glazing and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
So,
understand all that.
You have to accept that it's in two parts now, really, this application, but it's all part of one application, effectively.
Okay, yeah, move on. I've got another question regarding this 10% threshold that we talk about. And Ms Llewellyn and Councillor Dix have referred to, normally we'd be looking at 2, 3, 4 bedroom houses to change into HMOs. This is going to be 22, up to 22 in one, which may, if we divided that by 4, we talk about 5 different houses in the area. How does that affect the 10% threshold that we might then consider too much, I wonder?
Are you going to come back on that, Carwyn, or?
Yeah, I need to be careful on this because my name got in the press last month for actually saying something on this matter, and Kerry might want to come in on this one as well. Well, my name's used in the press every month after planning committee, to be honest with you, but that's by the by. Yeah, I appreciate your point of view here. That this if we were saying considering a terraced house being converted into a HMO, we'd be looking at 4 bedrooms, and therefore you've got one bedroom, one property of that nature. This is for significantly more than that. So say it was 7 properties, but we've still only got one other property in the Pontefraith area.
Yeah.
So even if this is 7, you've only got 8, and that still is nowhere near 10% of all of the properties in the Pontefraith area. So, you know, irrespective of where we draw that line in terms of 10%, we are still nowhere near that line.
That's okay.
Even if we were at that line, we still have to consider whether it is acceptable in planning terms anyway, because the guidance doesn't say that after 10% it's unacceptable.
No,
it says that
it's not a limit. It's something you have to consider.
Yeah, what it actually says is after 10% is a point at where issues can occur. Doesn't say that they will occur. It says that they can occur. So in terms of that 10%, I mean, and I think I was probably one of the first people to put that in a report. And it's a bit misleading, to be honest with you, because it doesn't necessarily mean after 10% that we'll be looking to refuse applications, but we may be looking to more carefully consider the impacts on the wider community.
Okay. Chair, I've got two other different questions, but I can see there are other members would like to come in and speak. Would you allow me to come back in?
Well, why not? Views now, Councillor Adams. Let's have all your questions.
This issue, moving on, Kerry. I'm sure you'll be able to, and you've partly gone down that route. In what does moving on mean for us as a community, the individuals themselves, and even their neighbours?
So in terms of, I suppose, the way that we're looking at proposing this is that we will have an element as it sits at the moment as that kind of initial emergency accommodation that's provided on a nightly basis when we are working with someone under our statutory duty. As part of that statutory duty, we have to provide more settled accommodation, which is where the more self-contained kind of annex units come into practice. So where we may have individuals occupying the HMO kind of single rooms within the unit, as part of our statutory duty to meet their longer term housing need, they may be suitable, and their longer term need, if they've got specific family connections or needs to remain in the Pontefraith or Blackwood area, that might be the most viable source in terms of moving them into that permanent accommodation. It kind of limits any significant upheaval in terms of, you know, not being able to stay within that area of where they may be employed or have family or have various support networks, and also it means that they are familiar with the area. So from that perspective, that is kind of the step down that we're looking at, and what we think that this can deliver is an element of the assistance and that we need to consider as far as rapid rehousing goes with the directive from Welsh Government. And this provides and lends itself to meeting some of that need for individuals who may wish to remain in that particular area. In that respect, and going back to an earlier comment, you know, what we're also considering as part of the housing need within Caerphilly County Borough Council is to ensure that we have the right accommodation provision to meet everybody's need. So for this particular unit, as I've highlighted, we've been quite selective in who we can place within Chambers House because we recognise the close proximity to the neighbouring properties. We've been very selective in we're looking at people who are employed or have recently come out of employment, who are experiencing first-time homelessness, and we will continue to do that. And where we've got individuals where concerns have been raised with significant offending, we're looking at projects, or where significant substance misuse is concerned, we're looking at developing and building projects within the borough that provide specific accommodation to those individuals, so that we are able to take into account the geographic locations on those and that they are staffed appropriately. But what we also can't do as a local authority with public funds is overstaff certain provisions where, from a factual perspective, and given that Chambers House has been in occupation since the 5th of July and we've had no police call out significant complaints in terms of antisocial behaviour, the staffing level at this current time warrants the number of occupants. And as I have said, you know, there'll be additional resources available if the application does go through, and that can be continually reviewed from us as a local authority. And we recognise that individual person circumstances can change, so we will be fluid with that support that is on offer. And what we're also able to do is move people if that accommodation is no longer conducive to them.
Okay.
That one last question,
yes,
Chair.
Mike.
And
yes.
it's been claimed that this is costing us an awful lot of money to house these up to 10 people, up to a huge cost. Does that include also the cost of having the support staff there, or is that no cost to us? And is that figure of so much a week anywhere near accurate?
So with regards to the costings at the unit, obviously we pay the landlord a particular charge to have access to the unit. Because of the nature of that accommodation at the moment, and as a result of the pandemic, obviously we've had financial support from Welsh Government to cover that cost, and we've had additional funding for this particular year in order for us to ensure that we can provide and continue to ensure that we are attacking the homelessness issue within our local authorities and that we're supporting Welsh Government with the Everybody In. The element of support is funded through our housing support grant, through supporting people. So we commission Pobl as a support provider for a number of units across the local authority, and the level of support that they then provide is specific to that particular complex. So for example, we have some units that is providing 24/7 support, as Councillor Dix has alluded to, because the nature of the individuals within that facility require that level of support. That is funded through housing support grant as part of the Welsh Government's directive around prevention of homelessness, and it allows us to provide all those tenancy support services.
Okay, I won't ask you what the figures are because some of those will involve confidential information. So thank you very much, Kerry.
Thank you, Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me to go on so long.
Well, you had a number of questions. It's important that they brought before the committee. Carwyn Powell, you've still got your hand up. Is there anything that you wanted to comment on specifically at this time?
Yeah, I'll come in after everyone else has spoken, Councillor. I'll take my hand down for now, but if I could come back in later, please, if I can.
Okay. Yeah. Well, one of the questions that I wanted to raise was the situation with parking. Now, just for clarification, the car park that's opposite is free after 6 o'clock, isn't it? And many of these people are working, as you said. So effectively, there is parking available to them if they have vehicles. Can somebody clarify that? It is from 6 o'clock.
I'll come in on that point later on.
Okay, later on. Okay, that's good. Thank you. So we got two other speakers. We got Councillor Fussell and then Councillor Ridgewell. Councillor Fussell first.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just two questions, really. Just looking at the photographs that were supplied by Mrs. Llewellyn on the bin provision, there's nothing in the report that I can tell that there has been any bin provision requirement within this. There's obviously X amount of people there and have been since the COVID problem. And adding to the volume, I'm just wondering what's going to be the bin provision for that, because there is no frontage. It's up and down the stairs. I'm not too sure if there is supposed to be a provision for the rear access in part but I'll let you come back on that. And the second question I've got, looking at the schematic plans, all of the 1 and twin bedroom properties, self-contained units, have a toilet which only has one door, which accesses the living and kitchen area. I just wanted to query with yourselves as planners whether that conforms to building regs. In my humble understanding, it was 2 doors, but that's another thing. And I'm sorry that you're in the press all the time, Carwyn. I think it's time for Kerry to get her name in the press with regards to things like this. But one thing I will say, and I know Councillor Dix has worked in this environment, and I wouldn't. The worst thing is, from us as lay councillors, is that we only get to hear the worst outcomes of such hostelries. And there was a unit within Caerphilly that was taken over during COVID, and it had a mixed bag of individuals. It wasn't the best well run, but that's now being converted into a purpose-built facility, which is where I see this coming in. The only significant difference, however, it's a purpose-built facility for about 8 people. This is a purpose-built facility for 22, and I appreciate that is a significantly larger leap. So I do have some sympathy with Councillor Dix's comments, but if you can answer those questions, really, and look forward to your name in lights, Kerry.
Okay, can we go to Councillor Ridgewell first? And I'm sure that if you wish to come back in, then afterwards there's going to be time. Councillor Ridgewell.
Thank you, Chair. Can I first apologise? I've got a very poor signal here, so I can't put my camera on, and I'm hoping you can hear me.
Yes,
to some extent, I think a number of the questions have been answered already, or have been asked by my fellow members. And I think, like everybody else, I'm always prepared to bow to Councillor Dix's greater knowledge on these things. He works in the profession and knows all about it. But he does paint a very bleak picture most of the time, and it's quite frightening when I think of how these particular situations can develop. Now, my question largely is about the absence of complaints or the number of complaints that have been received so far. I think Kerry said that she's had very few complaints at all. And I'm just wondering what the complaints have been that she has had, the nature of them, and if she could just briefly outline the sort of things that have occurred in the past 12 months. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ridgewell. There's no indication from anyone else, and there's obviously a few questions that need to be answered. So who's going to come back in first? Is it Carwyn? You said you wanted to come back in?
If Kerry wants to come back in first, then that's the Councillor Ridgewell.
Yes, neither of you have got your hands up, so I'm looking for hands to come up, to be honest. So who's first? Kerry?
Chair, I'm happy to respond to Councillor Ridgewell.
Okay.
With regard to the complaints that we've received from the vicinity of the neighbours of Chambers House since occupation have been predominantly in relation to the car park and in relation to lights and car park noise and engines within a car park. Now, we've tried to investigate those as and when that information has been provided to us as a local authority. We have identified that on certain occasions they have been attached to vehicles attached to Chambers House, and at some evenings these have been in the early hours of the morning or in the evening, and that relays and kind of attach itself back to the fact that we have people who are in employment and who are on shift work, and therefore we've asked them to be as mindful as they can when entering and exiting the car park, but ultimately they do have to, as with anybody else who lives in a residential area, leave for work at any given time of day. We've also received some complaints with regards to a light impacting on one of the properties, and both myself and Mr. Coombs from Lily X Properties have attended that premises, have tried to observe that impact, and are trying to resolve that to the best of our ability by looking at additional blinds, dimming light switches, making sure and repetitively asking the occupants of that room to ensure that curtains are closed as it gets darker at night, etc. And there was an issue with some of the lighting within the general communal areas of the premises, which Mr. Coombs, on behalf of Lily X Properties, had addressed. We have received of late contact in respect of a vehicle being abandoned in the lane adjacent to Chambers House. I've met with Gwent Police in respect of that. That vehicle was not owned by any individual in Chambers House. And there was also an incident a couple of weeks ago in the car park again. And I'm aware that another car was stopped and pulled into the car park on the weekend just past. And again, having spoke to Gwent Police, any vehicle stop and searches that have taken place, we are confident, having had those discussions with police, that they are not in any way, shape or form residents of Chambers House and are individuals who live within the locality. We've also had some complaints with regards to back last November with what was perceived to be noise nuisance. When we responded to that complaint, what we did advise was Chambers House at that point in time was actually decanted because additional electrical works were being done. So unfortunately, we weren't able to address that because what we could categorically confirm were that they were not, the noise nuisance was not attached to anybody within Chambers House because there was nobody in occupation at that time. We've not had any complaints raised to us with regards to any rubbish being impacting the actual kind of walkways. What we have confirmed is that Lily-X Properties provide, outside of the standard Caerphilly County Borough Council refuse collection, they also provide their own additional refuse collection function because of the nature of and the number of individuals within that vicinity. And we have confirmed with Lily-X that that support would continue should the additional numbers within the vicinity of Chambers House on Blackwood Road following tonight's application be granted.
Thank you. Chair, if I may just ask a supplementary question, if you'll allow. Of course. Okay, thanks. You've listed a number of things, and I appreciate that, Kerry. Thank you very much. But can you be quite categorical about the fact that the worries that have been raised by Councillor Dix concerning violence, drug abuse, spilling out, and drug abuse in the adjoining areas, the public spaces, the park opposite, and that sort of thing? They're really worrying things. Have any of those been reported or occurred in the last 12 months at all?
No, and Gwent Police have also confirmed that they've had no contact in respect of any concerns around antisocial behaviour, substance misuse. Gwent Police have not attended Chambers House at any point since we took occupation in July 2021.
Okay, thanks. And just the final question, I think others are going to want an answer to this one, is, within the preamble to the report, it talks about short-term occupancy. What sort of occupancy times do we have? I mean, what sort of turnover do we have on clients within this building as an average?
I mean, Councillor Ridgewell, that's quite challenging because you will appreciate that the move on into single person accommodation within the borough itself is challenging at this point in time. But I would say on average, the length of stay can be anywhere from 6 to kind of 3 months. We have had some successful move-ons. We do have turnover within the unit. And I think that part of the testament to us being able to do that is a result of the nature of individuals. They're not individuals with high-level complex needs or high-level support needs. And therefore, from our perspective, these are individuals that we can move on into other accommodation quite easily because they are viable, suitable tenants to live within stable, settled communities, and they don't have that high level of support need. And from a financial perspective, for some individuals, there is a little bit of fluidity in terms of what they can afford. So we've been able to move some individuals into not only social housing, but the private rented sector as well.
Thank you very much, Kerry, and thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Dix, you've got your hand up. You want to come back in? You're the only other person, I think, at the moment who wants to make a contribution.
Okay,
so.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not saying that all hostels and all people are going to be going to fail, but that is the reality that some will fail, based on my experience. And when it comes to move on, when you get ready someone to move on, that like Kerry was saying, it's a bit like how long's a piece of string, because everything could be going swimmingly along, and then all of a sudden something happens that sends them right back. It could be debt, it could be lots of different things that are there that could upset the apple cart, right? Mental health issues, debt, all sorts of things outside the control of the provider, and sometimes outside the control of the client themselves. In my experience, the average stay that I would found would be say anything from 8 months to a year, sometimes even 2 or 3 years at a time, where people are difficult. But Kerry says that she's going to looking at clients that will have a quick move on, to what she said. So, but that's my experience. It can be a bit difficult of that. How long's a piece of string? The other thing is as well is the rear lane, access to the building via the rear lane. Is it an adopted lane? Is that our property, or is it property of the individuals who properties are close by it? In other words, do we have to cross their land to get to the back of that property? James House.
Okay. Right, Carwyn, are you able to come in and help with this? I see your hand is up.
Yeah, okay. A number of points have been raised, and I don't want to labour this matter too long. We discussed HMOs at length in every committee for the last 3 or 4 months. We've discussed this one now for an hour. Mike has kindly presented the last 3 committees on HMOs, I think. Effectively, we've had a lot of information today, and a lot of information which is very useful to members in the consideration of HMOs, but unfortunately, a lot of it is irrelevant in planning terms. We have to look at the merits of this from a planning perspective, and that is the use of the building acceptable, having regard for the effect on the amenity of neighbouring properties, and that is loss of privacy, overbearing impact, that sort of nature. Is it acceptable in terms of highway safety, and is it acceptable from all other planning regards? And the report makes it clear that from a planning perspective, it is considered by officers that this use is acceptable in this building. It's located in a sustainable location, adjacent to Blackwood Town Centre. There's a bus stop that I know of, which is within, what was it, 50 yards of the site, the other side of the roundabout. There's also the retail park just to the north of it as well, so it's got access to a supermarket very close by. It's a sustainable location. There's a town centre car park adjacent to it or across the road, which, as you say, may well be free in the evenings. It's also got an existing use which requires X number of parking spaces, and the proposed use then requires X number. That will be detailed in the report as to what the balance is. But having regard for that balance and the sustainable location of the site, it's considered to be acceptable from a high use perspective. We've considered the impact on the privacy of neighbouring properties, and where there is seen to be a potential for overlooking or loss of privacy, we've imposed conditions that would require obscure glazing. In terms of the amenity of neighbouring properties, yes, this would be a different use to what the office use was previously. But this is a building adjacent to the town centre. It's a large building which is suitable for this type of use in a suitable location from a planning perspective, and in that regard is considered to be acceptable. Specifically, some of the points that were raised, Mrs. Llewellyn referred to the fact that this is a high-risk building. In planning terms, it is not a high risk. We're looking at a HMO here. We're not looking at a medium or high secure institution, which would be a different use class. This is a HMO and has to be considered as such. Councillor Dix referred to converted buildings not being suitable for this type of use, and the fact that there's no CCTV. Whilst those issues may have been answered by Kerry, effectively those are not planning matters. Those are matters under other legislation, and is not something we can consider. I've mentioned the car parking, the cost to the council. Again, Kerry's answered that question in part, but that is not a planning matter and not something we can consider as a planning authority. Compliance with building regulations, again, is not a matter for the planning authority. What we have to consider is, would the amenity of occupiers of each individual apartment or flat be acceptable in planning terms? So we would look at whether there's outlook from the windows, whether they've got natural light or natural outlook from any sort of habitable rooms. So if it's a bathroom without a window, that isn't an issue. If it's a living room or a bedroom, realistically it should have a window in it. So that's the sort of thing we look at from a planning perspective. And in this regard, all of the apartments would have that. And the last one, Councillor Fussell mentioned refuse collection. I did just check the report, and there isn't a condition in respect of the submission of a scheme for refuse collection. But if members are minded to refuse, then we could certainly impose such a condition if they feel that that's necessary to make the application acceptable.
Yeah. Thank you, Carwyn. That clarifies a number of issues relative to this application, and I hope that members will bear that in mind when they come to consider their decision as to whether or not they're going to approve or reject. You've simplified the issue a great deal. Thank you. Councillor Dix, you've still got your hand up, and Councillor Adams.
Yes, sorry, Chair. I just I'm got to reply to the back lane. If does accessing the property, the HMO mean you got to cross private land, the other people's property?
It's certainly not adopted, Councillor. Whether it's privately owned or not, I couldn't possibly comment on because we don't have that information. But it's certainly not an adopted highway.
So therefore, it could be in the deeds of the people who own the properties.
It could be. It could be within the ownership of the people who live on Blackwood Road. But it also could be that even if it is, that if it's been maintained by the council, and I'm not saying it has. This is an incident we've had elsewhere within the county borough. But
yes, it's not adopted, didn't you?
Yeah, if it's been maintained by the council, it still has effectively the same status as adopted highway. So the difference would be whether it has been maintained. I couldn't answer that question today. It would be a matter for the Highways Operations Directorate to advise on that matter.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Adams, quickly.
You want the answer to the
You've got
question
your hand
that
up still.
Carwyn couldn't?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Do you want the answer to the question that Carwyn couldn't? Which I did indicate before.
If it's going to make any difference to the decision that we're taking.
The first contact I had with Ms. Llewellyn was about the problems with Libby Alex originally going to the back of the lane and into the property behind Chambers House, which I'm now told is also owned by the immediate next door neighbour. And no, I was told it's not an adopted highway and is maintained by at the back of each of the householders' properties. How about the lane from the main road that gets up to that point? I'm not sure, because as Councillor Dix will know, it's quite a rough lane. I don't think we've probably ever adopted it and done any maintenance on it. So it's a privately owned ×4 lane. A little bit.
Whether that makes any difference to the decision we're going to take.
It's the answer to the question that was asked.
Okay. Right. Councillor Ridgewell, you've got your hand up again. Do you want to come in with any information or clarification? No, you've taken it down.
Chair, yes,
right then, members.
Chair, I did want to speak, if I may. Yes, I just want to say that having listened to the arguments, I'd like to move officers' recommendations on this particular matter.
Okay, that's just what I was about to ask for, Councillor Ridgewell. So you've come in before I've asked the question. So we have a recommendation before us to approve the recommendations put forward by officers to grant this application. Is that seconded by anyone? If it's not, if I can't hear a voice. Sorry?
I'll second, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hussey. So it's been moved and seconded. In that case, we can now put this to the vote. Rebecca, can you put a voting slip up for us, please? So the recommendation has been moved and seconded.
Apologies, Chair, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I don't know where I actually muted myself accidentally, but what I was saying, the application has now been moved and seconded, and we have the voting slip in front of us now. So if you are in favour of the recommendation to accept this application, press yes. If not, no, or abstain, and then the submit button.
Chair, we'll just confirm the vote now. If you just give us a moment, please.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, Chair, the vote is in order. So that's 8 for, 2 against and 1 abstention. So that's carried, Chair.
Right. Thank you, Rebecca. So now we can move on to agenda item 5.
Sorry,
yes.
Chair. And perhaps I shouldn't really come in here. I suggested that members might want an additional condition. Was that part of the recommendation, or did they want it to be approved as recommended? I think, in all honesty, they just voted to approve it as.
Sorry,
Carwyn. Chair, I remiss when Carwyn mentioned that. I meant to ask you to include it, but yeah, you're right. We've gone through that now.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Just for clarification, then, do we have that original recommendation in there or not?
I think the move was to as per officer recommendation, wasn't it, which wasn't included in that condition, unfortunately. But it is what it is, I'm afraid.
Okay, right. I'm sorry about that. I think the debate went on that long. Yes, I beg your pardon. Okay, then we move on to agenda item 5, which is the land at Park Penalta. It's application number 210342 LA. The case officer is Carwyn Powell. It's pages 13 to 24 of your pack. Carwyn.
Just a moment, Chair. Just trying to find the actual, because I've got it open somewhere, the plan, and I can't find it now. Presentation. Okay, sorry. Yeah, okay. This is an application for the land at Penalta Park, Penalta Road, Hengoed, Ystrad, and this is the application site here. So this doesn't give a great deal of context, but this is the main A472. So off to the west in this direction is Nelson. Off in the east in this direction is Ystrad. This is an existing access into the site, which sorry. This is an existing access into the site which many members would have passed on their way between Ystrad and Nelson. So what we're looking at is an application for this parcel of land here, which is just visible down from the road, and it's for the erection of a visitor centre for the country park to provide services in association with our countryside services section. So this is the site layout. So as you can see, we have a building here in the middle of the plateau, and this then would be a concourse around the building, providing access to the facilities within. This area here, just off the plan, but not included within this application, is an existing car park, which was approved under the consent granted in 2012. So this is the building. As you can see, it's a relatively modern design with a mixture of timber cladding and metal roof on it, and metal cladding to some of the walls as well. We have some 3D pictures here showing what it would look like from sort of an aerial view as such. As you can see, it's got some curved elements to it, which give views then over the country park to the north. And we then have some internal views of the building with some meeting and conference facilities. There would be a cafe within the building as well, public toilets for use within the car park, within the park itself. And that concludes the presentation. So as I say, this is an application for the visitor centre within the country park. The access to the site largely was approved under the 2012 consent, albeit this consent requires the improvements to the access in the provision of a ghost island junction to provide access for vehicles turning right when travelling in a westerly direction towards Nelson. The proposal, as I say, would provide facilities within the park and would also provide conferences and training to school groups and things like that nature in terms of countryside issues and ecology. We've considered the application on its planning merits. The design of the building is considered to be acceptable. The access subject to the improvements is considered to be acceptable. The application has been considered by our highways officers, and it's felt that a bus service would be
necessary for this development, because it's on the A472 main arterial route through the county borough. An inline bus stop, which would be one which is painted on the road, wouldn't be suitable because that would interrupt the flow of traffic. And because of the topography of the site, it's not possible to have one adjacent to the highway. So the proposal is that we've imposed a condition to require the provision of a scheme for the provision of public transport facilities, which will essentially require buses to call into the site as they pass the site between Estromynach and Nelson, to pick up any people wishing to use public transport facilities in the area. In terms of the conditions imposed on the consent, condition 10 is in relation to car parking. Our highways colleagues have asked for an amendment to that to require additional disabled parking facilities, and therefore the recommendation is to approve subject to the amendment to condition 10.
I muted again. I don't know what's happening to my cursor here. Seems to be sliding up to mute. Yes, there are no indication of any questions on this. I think everybody seems to be happy with that report. Oh, Councillor Ridgewell. Oh, Councillor Taylor. No, they're coming in. They're flooding in now. Councillor Ridgewell.
Surely, Chair, knowing me and my reputation, and this being my last meeting, I'm hardly going to go without saying something on this particular point. Just quickly, my recollection, this has been dragging on for many, many years. I think most of the time I've been an elected member, I've been on the planning committee, apart from a short sojourn where I spent some time doing something else. There was always an issue, I recall, with access and the Ghost Island and problems with the highways there. Perhaps Carmen could just remind me how that's been resolved, because I'm desperately trying to remember precisely what it was. Cabling or something was an issue, was it not?
I can't comment on that matter really, in terms of the cabling. Or there is an approved plan included within the details which shows Ghost Island. I can recall, even though I am quite young, that there was previously a lay-by the opposite side of the road from this site here. And that was filled in some years ago, and the proposals include expanding the highway into that lay-by to provide the width to create the Ghost Island. So the plan shows that it's achievable. Okay, I mean, in terms of rerouting cabling, that isn't necessarily something which would prevent development, but there's obviously a cost to it, and that's a matter for the Park Service to ensure they have the funding in place to provide that. But the submitted details show an adequate access, which has been considered by our highways colleagues.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you. Can I just respond on that? Yes, thank you, Carwyn. I'm not sure there's a side swipe at my age, you being so young, but I won't take offence at it at all tonight. My only comment on this is that this has long been overdue. It's something I think we all anticipated. I look forward to its development, and when the time comes, I should probably support it.
Okay. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to actually move approval along with the officer's recommendations for this. I can recall that I was the cabinet member for this service when the park was created, particularly that wonderful earth sculpture that's there behind Liz Aldworth and Sultan the Pit Pony. So I have great pleasure in moving this this addition to the facilities available at Park Penallta. And I hope it'll be very successful, particularly for groups of from our schools being able to utilise it.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So you've moved it. Do we have a seconder? Don't all rush at the same time. I'm sure everybody wants to
second it, Chair.
Okay.
I had many voices in the background, so it's certainly been seconded.
That was good. That was
I
good.
think you choose the easy applications, Carwyn, don't you? Here we go.
Any additional conditions?
With the additional condition, yes, which was relating to disabled parking. Yeah.
Yes, with the additional
condition. So it's been moved and seconded. Can we have the voting slip up, please, Rebecca?
Oh, hang on.
Oh no,
hang on. Councillor Adams, your hand wasn't up at the time.
It was up.
Chair, the vote's been taken.
This voting time. And because John made the comments that he did about being the cabinet member at the time that this was being moved forward, congratulations for what you did with the park. John, and you will remember that when this was first announced on the council website, there were quite a few objections that it was on the wrong side of the park and should have been overlooking Sultan. I don't know whether there was much response to that from those who've been involved, but no, I think it's a great thing.
Okay, thank you. Right, now we'll have the voting slip then. Right, you know the order, members? Yes, if you're approval, no if you're against, and there's the abstain button below it. And then press your submit button. While we wait for the result, Councillor Ridgewell, your hand is still up. I did say we'd give you half an hour at the end of the meeting if you wanted it. To say your goodbyes.
A legacy hand, Chair. I
Okay.
apologise.
Chair, just to confirm the vote is in order. So that's 10 for, 0 against, 0 abstain. So that's unanimous, Chair. It's carried.
Okay, thank you. So now we move on to agenda item 6, which is application 21/1090 RM, which is the Austin Garage, Mice Glass, South Caerphilly. And the case officer for this is Justin Waite.
Chair,
would you like to make the presentation, Justin?
Chair, erring on the side of caution, I will declare an interest in this because there's a possibility that Mr. and Mrs. Griffiths may still own Austin Grange, and therefore I'll declare an interest. I'll leave the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
I don't know whether you want to come back in at the end, Councillor Taylor, but if not, I wish you all the best for the future. This is our last meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully the presentation is shown on the screen.
It is.
It is. Okay, so I'll just run you through it, and just to confirm, I am Justin Waite, the case officer. This application relates to the Austin Grange site, just the Mitre Glass near Caerphilly town. The proposal itself relates to a residential development. Outline planning permission has previously been granted, and this application seeks approval of the reserved matters in respect of appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. The residential development seeks to deliver 74 affordable dwellings, which is mixed between over 55 apartments, social rented units and shared ownership units. If you just take a look at the site location plan on the right hand side here, just for some context, just to the western site boundary of Heel Austin, a residential area. Mice Glass is just on the northwest corner of the site. You have allotment gardens there to the north. You have existing industrial units at Poplar Road there on the sort of northeastern boundary of the site. And then along the eastern and southern boundary of the site, you have an approach road which leads to the park and ride facility at Caerphilly train and bus station. Just to give you some context with some site photos, this is a view looking westwards along the approach roads towards the train station. The site itself is just sort of on the right hand side. You can see a strong hedged boundary there. You can just see Heel Austin just in the distance, and if you can imagine, just on the right there off this road, the vehicle access goes into the site. I should have highlighted that the access was actually approved at outline stage previously, and that has been retained as part of the reserve matters proposals. This is looking in the opposite direction, looking eastwards along the approach road. You can see the site there just on the left hand side. You can see an existing boundary wall there that'll be removed as part of the development, and on the site itself you can see it's a 2-story building. It's a disused bungalow there, and just in the distance sort of derelict disused industrial units. Those will all be removed as part of the proposed development. Looking southwards along the approach road, if you could just imagine on the right hand side there, you can see the hedgerow and some trees. Just there will be the 5-story apartment building, and I'll show you some visualizations of that as we move on the presentation. And as you can see, that's the roundabout there, which leads off to the railway station. This is a view from within the site, looking westwards, just to give you an idea of the residential properties adjacent to the site. That's Heol Austin there, the residential properties, and the impact on those properties was discussed within the report itself. This is a view northwards. This building here is a two-storey building on the site. This is the confirmed back roost. That will be removed as part of the development, demolished, and you probably noticed in the report the subject to mitigation measures. There'd be no unacceptable impact on the bat population in the vicinity, and you might just be able to pick up there, just in the distance, some residential properties of mice glass just beyond the trees there, which are largely being retained on that corner. This is a view looking northwestwards. Again, you can see mice glass there in the distance. And again, this just gives you an indication of the buildings on site. That's the bungalow we saw earlier, and that's the two-storey building to be demolished. And this is a view northeastwards, just looking towards the disused derelict industrial or sort of warehouse units on the site. You can see that that's been significantly developed in the past, and that is at a slightly lower level than the rest of the site, and that has an effect on the appearance of the five-storey apartment building as you see it from the approach road. Just to move on to the site layout plan, you can see the approach road there along the just to the right and along the bottom. That's the vehicle access coming in off the approach road into the site. Sort of on the central and western part of the site, this is where the two-storey properties will be. The units there adjacent to the approach road will front onto the approach road, giving an active frontage. And these, I think it's about five units here, just to the north of the site. They will look outwards towards the allotment gardens to the north there. The apartment buildings are more on the eastern part of the site. If you can see my cursor, the four-storey building is here, the five-storey building adjacent to the existing industrial units. And just in front of this five-storey building, this is where there's some undercroft car parking. And just to pick up on some additional infrastructure on the site, you can see here that the sort of SUDS features and open space areas. There's a water attenuation area here and another SUDS features within the site itself. Moving on to just some proposed street scenes to give you an indication of how the development will appear from the approach road. If you can imagine, the vehicle access into the site is just to the right-hand side. So these units here, two semi-detached buildings of four properties fronting onto the approach road which runs along the south. And as you can see, the side elevation of this block here gives an active frontage as well as you come into the site. This next visualization is on the other side of the vehicle axis. So if you can imagine, the vehicle axis is now here on the left-hand side. Again, you can see that largely the two-storey buildings stepping up to a three-storey building. And if we just continue on to the next slide here, I've left a little bit of that three-storey building so we can see here how it steps up onto the four-storey and then five-storey buildings. These are actually the rear of the apartment buildings, as the main access into the buildings is from within the site and the entrance to them. But as you can see, there's a lot of windows, fenestration, balconies, which give an active frontage as well at the approach road. And as indicated, the five-storey building, because the levels are slightly lower on that part of the site, as you can see, even though it is five-storey, it doesn't appear significantly higher than the four-storey building there. Just to give you a little more detail on the five-storey apartment building. The top elevation there, I've just shown that to give an indication of the undercroft parking. So there's actually parking under there, and there's a space above here which can be used by the residents. Obviously the elevation below there, that's the front of the building. You can just pick up a couple of people there, just showing where the entrances are into the buildings. The materials are a mixture of brick, stone on some of the two-storey buildings, as you can see, cladding, grey cladding, buff colour brick, and the roofs are largely grey in colour. The last slide just gives an indication of some of the other blocks within the site itself. These are the properties which were looking north, fronting onto the allotments, and then this image here just at the bottom, if you can imagine, that's where the entrance comes in. We saw the side of this property earlier, and these are fronting on then into the site itself. In terms of the acceptability of the development itself, you'll see from the report that the development is considered to be acceptable in terms of its layout, scale, appearance and landscaping, and is in accordance with the relevant local development plan policies, national policies, and the recommendation on page 40 of the report is for the reserve matters to be approved subject to a number of conditions. So I'll stop my presentation there, Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Councillor Fussell, you've got your hand up straight away.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, because I'm suffering with a bit of COVID-19, which is wonderful. I've managed to avoid it for the last 2 years, and then we get caught. Thank you, Justin, for the presentation, and I do hope my class is equally retained, because I don't think they've been told they were going to be demolished in the first place. Just listening to your presentation. Interesting that there's a comment from 21st Century Schools manager in connection with Welsh medium education needing to be bolstered. I don't think it's in isolation to this, however, reading the report, I think it's more to do with the amount of housing that's already been proposed within the Caerphilly Basin. But hopefully that they'll be able to look at that and deal with it sooner rather than later, rather than being ahead of the game more than behind it. So hopefully that will be conveyed at some point, or well, it's already been conveyed. But the urgency is what I'm concerned with. On your slide number 10, which is the overlay showing the attenuation ponds, etc. I did visit the site many years ago when this was an application for, I think, 6 or 7 properties at the time, when Mr. Griffiths was seeking to develop it, but in a smaller sense. And I think it was noted that there was a drainage element that had been culverted. Can you confirm again on that slide 10 that that northern boundary, which marks the allotment site, is that part of that previously culverted drain that's now going to be opened up? If you're able to comment on that one. And then on a third item, there's been no comment from Parks in relationship to securing any improvements to local playing fields. Appreciate you can't condition that subsequently, but if the if there's an opportunity to convey to the developer and or the owner, I'm more than open to them jumping on board with Caerphilly in Bloom to support our orchard planting, which will be in and around those 2 areas, which is either Bartlett Street or Southern Street. But yeah, if you want to come back to me on that, please, Justin, appreciate it. And yeah, I look to support it. It's needed development in terms of fulfilling our quota, and I think it's a positive development overall.
So can I assume then, Councillor Fussell, that you're moving this, are you?
I'll move it, yeah, unless there's other conditions to be added, but I'll move it as it stands. I'll move recommendation to approve, yeah. Okay.
I'm not going to tailor debate if members wish to ask any more questions or wish to have any more clarity on this development, but can we have a second? I know it's been moved.
Second, Chair.
Okay. Now, are there any other member would like any information at all or clarification? No hands are up.
Well,
okay, in which case then.
Yeah, Chair, I was just going to second it, but
it's already been seconded. Thank you. Yes,
and wish James a swift recovery.
Okay, that's not a planning condition. No, okay. Right, okay, then it's been moved and seconded. Can we have the voting slip up then, please, Rebecca?
Thank you, Chair. I thought I might have had a reply off Justin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, I beg your pardon. Yes.
But in terms of the school provision, obviously the 21st Century Schools has come back and said that English medium, junior and secondary, primary and secondary school was fine. I think the only potential lack of provision, if all the developments in the catchment come forward, could be in relation to, I think it was with primary Welsh medium, but that was a could. It's not a definite lack of provision, but obviously 21st century schools are fully aware of the developments coming forward, and they can look at the capacity of those schools going forward. And obviously what we don't know with these developments is whether, you know, the parents' preference is for them to go to Welsh medium or English. So it may be even that, you know, if when this development comes forward, that if there's not a strong demand for Welsh medium from the parents, then there might not necessarily be an issue. So that is only a potential issue that was raised.
Welsh government have a view to say on how many Welsh speakers they want, and I think we need to build bigger schools for Welsh medium. But anyway, that's a moot point, Justin. Thanks very much.
Okay, no problem. In terms of the attenuation areas, yeah, just to clarify, there is a watercourse on site, the Nantic, I think it's called. That will be opened up in certain places on the site where it's already culverted, but because of the access road going in, it will be culverted in certain places as well. But that has been taken into account as part of the surface water drainage on the scheme, and the sort of surface water attenuation areas and the SUDS features, they will ultimately discharge into that watercourse to convey the surface water off site. But alongside planning permission, obviously the applicant will require sustainable drainage approval from the sustainable drainage approval body. So the full details of that will be considered, you know, under their remit. But it certainly had regard to it, and the you know, the drainage engineer on the scheme has raised no concerns in principle in what they're doing in terms of surface water drainage and what the alterations are to that stream on site. And in terms of the parks comment, I think you just wanted me to convey to the applicant that you would like them to contribute to the schemes coming forward. So yeah, I'm happy to do that if that's what you wanted me to do. Yeah, no problem.
Sure, just passport my details to them if you wouldn't mind. And seeing as I'm still going to be a town councillor, I don't know if I'm going to be a county councillor yet, but certainly be a town councillor. But it's more to do with planting orchards, just sowing the seeds, sir. Thanks.
Okay. You've got the plug in, I think, Councillor Fussell.
Yeah,
I think you got the plug in. Yeah, and I'm sorry I overlooked your questions. I was so surprised to see that we were going to go through this application without any further hands being up. And when you put forward the recommendation, it took me off balance a bit. That's great. Okay, I'll be sure that nobody else wants to make a contribution. That's it. Lovely. Okay, can we have the voting slip up now then, please, Rebecca? We have an alien amongst us, if you noticed. Right, if you vote for, obviously, for the recommendation with the conditions,
I think it's
or
a less
no,
interested
or
mute.
abstain. It's a
Just going to check the vote, Chair. You 1 moment.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca.
How come John's camera is working now?
It's a cardboard cutout.
Chair, the vote is in order, so it's 9 for, 0 against, 0 abstentions, so that's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you, members. Well, that concludes the applications that are before us tonight. This is, as everybody realizes, the last meeting we have a planning, and probably the last meeting that takes place before the forthcoming event on May the 5th. So I wish you all well. I'd like to thank officers for their help they've given us in determining these applications, and to the members as well for their participation, and to wish those people that are leaving us the very best for the future, and to those people who are hoping to come back, I wish you every success. So thank you all and good night.
Thank you, Chair, and echo your comments. Good luck, everybody.
All the best, Roy.
Bye bye.